Welcome to our first unit of study on rigid transformations and congruence. Our first section is on transformations. There will be a number of lessons that help us to understand transformations. We're beginning today with lesson 1.1 on transformers, describing movement in the plane. In this lesson, we'll describe how a figure moves and turns to get from one position to another. We'll be working through the Desmos activity completed in class. This recording should help students who were absent to understand the main ideas of our in-class exploration and discussion. In our first few slides, we'll be describing the movement of a figure from one spot to another. So let's start by creating a figure here. It says to drag a few points to create your shape. I'm going to make a shape that's kind of pointy on the sides and squashed in the middle like a bow tie. And let's move on. So here's our shape. You can see the shape here, and when we press play, the shape will move, and our job is to describe that movement. Let's go ahead and hit play now. Now remember, we're going to try to describe this movement. Let's do it one more time. So what happened to your shape? Now, in later lessons, we're going to introduce some vocabulary for describing certain movements, but for now, we can say that the figure, let me get in here and type, the figure spun, or the figure turned. This is what we did in class, just found some vocabulary and ways of describing what happened to the figure. Some students might continue on to talk about how much it spun or turned. They might say 1/4 turn, or they might say 90 degrees. So it spun a quarter turn. Let's play one more time to show you. And some even went on to say what direction it turned, clockwise or counterclockwise. Okay, as it moved from that original to the new one, it looks like it moves counterclockwise. So there were different levels of description. Some people stopped at the figure spun or the figure turned. Some went on to be more detailed. Here's our same bow tie. We're going to do another transformer. Let's press play, and remember that our job is to describe what happened to the shape. We'll do it a few times. All right, so for our bow tie this time, it looks like it flattened out and got wider. Some students stopped at it flattened out. Some students added that it got wider. But that's all we're trying to do today, just describe how a shape is changing. To me, it looks like somebody's taking that bow tie and just tightening it up. Let's do one more. Here's our bow tie one last time. And you can see that this time, it looks like two things happened. We thought it was done, and then it kept going. I'm going to do it one more time, and we'll look at the two things that happened. So let's go ahead and describe the first transformation and then the second. First transformation looks like it shrunk. And the second transformation looks like it moved up and to the left. Figure shrunk. So that's just us describing the movement. Try to write in complete sentences in a way that would help somebody understand what really went on. So this next activity is fun, but describing how each of these kaleidoscopes works is harder. So let's take a look at these different kaleidoscopes. Play around with them a little bit. And remember that what's important is searching for ways to describe movement. This is just a little trickier. I'm going to let you see if you can do this one on your own. There's nothing to type in here. Oops. For the first kaleidoscope, you're asked to draw in a certain space. I'm going to try a different shape. So think of how you would describe what was happening to somebody else. I'm going to do one more. And then experiment with the other kaleidoscopes and see if you could do the same thing. How would you describe what was happening there? Here's the third one. How could you describe that one? And finally, what's happening there? So how would you describe to somebody else the difference between one and the other? Let's move on to this next slide. It gives us an idea of the type of thing that you might see in your practice assignment or on an assessment. So how would we describe the transformation from this this gray figure to the red one? We have this character, Titus, who created a shape and then used a transformer. The shape before is gray, the shape after is red. We can describe what happened to the shape. Imagine what a transformer might have done. It looks like two things must have happened. It looks like, first of all, it turned. We can be more precise if we'd like. I'm going to say it turned 90 degrees counterclockwise. After it turned, it moved down and to the right. Let's do another one. For this one, it says Marcella saw a transformer and described the shape before and after like this. The shape turned and then moved down and to the right. Which transformer do you think she was describing? Well, let's look for one that looks like it turned over and then moved down and to the right. I think it's this first one. I can picture this kind of falling down to the left so that it looks more like that red shape and then moving down into the right. For all of these others, it looks like it didn't just fall, it looks like it flipped, well, here and here, it looks like it flipped over. And here, it does look like it turned, but it didn't move down into the right. So I think the first one is the one that it should be. And we're asked to explain our thinking. Okay, it took me a second to think of what to write because it's really difficult not just rewriting the same thing that was the description. So I tried. I said in the upper left tile, this one over here, it looks like the gray shape tipped over to the left, like a tree that fell down, then scooched lower and to the right. It's hard thinking of other language sometimes. So in this lesson, we really just wanted you to understand that you can describe how a figure moves and turns to get from one position to another. In the next lessons, we're going to be talking about more formal language that we can use to do this. So in this lesson, we described how a figure moves and turns to get from one position to another. In Schoology, you can find a link to the notes for this lesson and directions for completing extra practice.